Hey, we're talking to Amaury Sechet, who's the lead developer for Bitcoin ABC. Now, Bitcoin ABC's been in the news a lot lately for some of the right and some of the wrong reasons. So, first of all, we're here at this conference. It's the Global Blockchain Developers Conference. I think a lot of people who came here today were expecting to hear the latest on Bitcoin Cash and what's been happening there. So, I mean, for the people who aren't really aware of it, could you just give like a really short summary of what's been happening in the past couple of weeks?
A lot of things. It's been a very, very eventful months or so. What's happening is that we are the faction of the community that, kind of like disagreed with the roadmap and went their own way under the name of Bitcoin SV. So there is that. It's probably the main event. It created a lot of uncertainty on the market, a lot of trouble. So, it's probably the main event.
Do you think Bitcoin SV expected all along to have the majority chain on Bitcoin Cash and take the BCH ticker, or do you think it was always part of the plan to fork off and become something completely new?
I don't know. I would have to be a mind reader to know. Clearly, what happened is not what they say would happen at all. Essentially, the only promise that they were able to deliver is to crater the price. Everything else did not happen the way they say it would.
Yeah. Well, the price is a big thing because I know all crypto's been crashing lately, but Bitcoin Cash, both variations of it, have probably fallen more than most. And I mean, people would attribute that to the fork. Is that true?
Partially. So I think the fork is more an event that revealed some problem rather than created them. I think there were some latent issue in the BCH community, and the fork was kind of like the conclusion of that, and it created some chaos. So you're already on the bear market, but especially in the bear market, you want to be more on the safe side of things. And so chaos is not exactly what you're looking for.
Exactly.
So I'm not too surprised that this had negative impact on the price. It would have been up to me for everything. Probably we would have gone that road. But the thing is, we had people that essentially declared war, and so you gotta when someone declares war on you, you gotta defend yourself, even though. Usually the other party is not extremely happy to go at war, and we were not, but...
Yeah, it's often how it happens.
Yeah.
Well, one of the hallmarks of Bitcoin Cash all along has been the fact that it's got separate development teams working on the protocol. There's not just one Bitcoin core, there's lots of them. And I kind of always predicted that would end up with a schism at some stage, because someone would try to influence or co-opt one of the teams. I'm not saying that's what happened.
No, I think this is a bit what happened. Actually, it's quite fun. Just after the week after the fork or so, I did Ask Me Anything on Reddit about the fork within the Bitcoin communities, and that's one of the things I raised. I was like, we need to stay very vigilant because some people are gonna create this kind of mess, and then. I didn't really saw that happening over the year. I tried to, I tried to point that out several times. So what's happening is that I think there is some historical reason around that. The community that wanted to scale on chain within Bitcoin has been excluded from many communication platforms. There was a lot of censorship going on, and so there is a bit of a culture within the BCH community that we must not exclude anyone, and this has many positive aspects. This is a very welcoming community, but this also makes the community weak in front of people that are a bit manipulative.
Yeah.
And so this is something I was trying to raise fairly early on. I think the way out of that is that you can still keep the community open, but this is important to have a high level goal and a high level roadmap to get there. Obviously, as time goes by, we know a bit more about all the detail as people figure it out, but we need to have a general direction, and every time you have someone that comes in and is like, okay, we want to build like, we don't want to go there, we want to go there. You're like, okay, well, that's fine if you want to go there, but this is not what we're doing. So good luck with your stuff.
Yeah, I think eventually it's the coin that trolls least that's probably going to get the most supporters, because
the
otherwise
coins
people,
that does what?
it trolls the least.
Trolls the least. I don't know, but I think there is way too much trolling. Yeah, it doesn't provide a lot of value.
Maybe I just have way too much faith in human nature.
Well, so there is one aspect of trolling is that it brings attention. So on one side there is like, people like the President Trump in the US understand that very well, is able to generate a huge amount of attention. Even if a lot of it is negative, is very and many people notice that very early on in his campaign. He knows how to say one thing that's going to cause every single media to talk about him the next day. Even if it's, bad press, there is, the saying that bad press is good press.
Maybe trolling if it's funny.
So I guess some amount of trolling can help PR, but at the same time, you need to be delivering value, like all those stuff, like who is the real Bitcoin, and everybody is claiming to be the real Bitcoin, and this kind of stuff. So people like doing that within crypto communities, in BTC, BCH, BSV, all of those people, they like to play this kind of game, but it looks stupid from the outside. The people that are not into crypto, are not interested into knowing which one is the real Bitcoin.
That's true. Yeah.
So
they don't even know that there are. Right?
Yeah. They don't really know it. They don't really care. What we need to focus on is, and those are the people that are important, right? Because the crypto community is big like this. The world is huge. So the crypto that is gonna be winning is not the one that's gonna win a fight against the other crypto. It's the one that's gonna reach out outside and get people to come in. And so to do that, you need to be focusing on what kind of problem you solve for people. You don't want to be focusing on who's the real Bitcoin or some other trolly thing like that.
True. All right. Well, let's just leave all the trolling aside, and we will talk about the roadmap and on the way forward. So you haven't actually spoken at this conference yet. What are you planning to talk about?
Okay, so I was scheduled for today, and we were planning to do that interview after the talk, but it ended up there was a change in the schedule, so I'm talking tomorrow.
I get a sneak preview instead.
Yeah. So I'm gonna talk mostly about Avalanche. So part of it, I'm gonna talk about the need to focus more and have a roadmap and all that we talked slightly already. So. But after that, I'm gonna say, so this is important to have a roadmap. This is what the roadmap is, and this is what is the, the coming stuff on the roadmap. And the coming stuff on the roadmap is Avalanche, which is a consensus algorithm that is different from proof of work and that have different characteristics.
Really?
And so it has pros and cons, but what we figured out is that you can use both proof of work and that other algorithm to get kind of like a best of both worlds situation.
So how does Avalanche actually fit into the Bitcoin Cash protocol?
Okay, so the main goal of Bitcoin Cash is having good monetary properties, which means so fungibility is not really related to Avalanche, but this is important. But what is related to Avalanche is being secure, being scalable, and having transactions that are as instant as possible. And Avalanche can help on those three fronts. So the basic idea is that when you do a transaction on the network, before it is included in a block, you don't quite know if that transaction is going to be accepted or not. Maybe you can do another transaction that sends the same money to someone else, and part of the network is going to consider one valid, part of the network is going to consider the other valid.
The old double spend. Actually, how much of a problem is the double spend in Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash?
In BTC, that's actually a fairly big problem.
Really?
But BTC kind of embraced the position that double spend are possible, and so you should not consider anything before it's included in the block as secure at all, right? That's the position of BTC, and they started added feature within BDC that essentially worsen the security of zero conf, but that provide something else on the other side. So stuff like RBF do exactly that. Yeah, RBF is like replace by fee. So you can replace a transaction that you already made by another one that's pay a higher fee. So that solves some of their problem, but at the same time
creates a bunch of new ones.
Yeah, well, it essentially reduced the security of zero conf, but they went into that direction that for them zero conf is not secure, so you shouldn't rely on the security of zero conf. No, BSV is claiming that they are very secure zero conf, but there was actually some researcher that did some work on that, like over the past month or so, and was able to spend like double spend with very, very high reliability, and the common double spend detection tool did not detect his attacks, and he was able to do it like many times, like very reliably, with like something like 99% success rate or like some stupidly high number like this.
Definitely not good.
Definitely not the good. On BCH, the situation is a bit more mixed. As far as I know, the latest results, like the latest data I have on that, show that you can double spend with a success rate of about 20%.
Even that's pretty high.
That's pretty high. Yeah. So this is one of the reasons why we want to introduce technology that makes that more difficult.
Absolutely, yeah. So if a coin is spent with Avalanche implemented, that coin's still spent on chain. Is that right? It's not a settlement layer like a Lightning Network or anything.
No, it's like, so you can still use the system without participating in Avalanche whatsoever, and it would still work for you. Okay, like if you have a wallet, like if you have your wallet that you have right now is gonna continue to work with that system, but maybe an updated version of your wallet or another wallet that knows about Avalanche could tell you within a few seconds if your transaction is finalized or not.
Right.
But your current wallet would work the same with the same characteristic. We don't change anything about how the blockchain works. But so the principle of Avalanche is okay. Let's take an example. Say there is a double spend on the network. There are two transactions that spend the same money. You know that one of them is valid. The two of them cannot be valid at the same time because they are spending the same money.
Yep.
How would you decide as a group or participant in the network which one is the valid one or not? The way the node works right now is that they consider the one that they see first to be the valid one. But because the network is distributed, information takes time to propagate on the network. So maybe some of the participants think that one transaction is the first one, but the other participant thinks that the second one is the first one. So you don't have like a very strong guarantee. Like you know for yourself what the situation is, but you don't know for other participants in the network what the situation is. So the way you can solve this is essentially choose some participant at random and ask them like, which one do you think is the correct one? And if most of them agree with you, then you're like, okay, now I have a stronger confidence that the one I've picked is the correct one. And if almost all of them tell you, no, this is the other one, then you're like, maybe, maybe most of the people on the network think that this is the other one. And in that case, I'm gonna change my own choice to be the other one, right? And so you can repeat that process. Like if everybody's repeat that process several times, you can prove mathematically that everybody is gonna converge toward the same decision.
Yep.
At least everybody that is honest, and you can support a very large portion actually of the node being dishonest, and the system still works. Obviously, those dishonest nodes, they may come to another conclusion, but you don't really care. They're dishonest.
Wow, to a layman like me, that sounds a bit like Ripple.
So it has some similarity with Ripple, except the trust model is actually fairly different. So the trust model of Ripple is a bit of you choose who you trust. You need to trust someone, but you can choose who you trust. That's the trust model of Ripple, which is weaker than a system like Bitcoin, where you essentially don't have to trust anyone but yourself. And Avalanche has a trust model that is much closer to the one of Bitcoin than to the one of Ripple.
Okay, right.
But in the kind of mechanism that you use in practice to reach consensus, it has similarities with Ripple.
Alrighty. And how far are we away from actually implementing this?
The work I've started on that. We already made good progress. Actually, we're probably going to be able to play with it on testnet early next year. And depending on how that goes, we can have a timeline for mainnet. But I would expect, mid next year or late next year,
right,
we should have something.
And is that going to require a hard fork to implement?
It doesn't require a fork at all.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, because we don't change anything about how the blockchain works. It's what we call pre-consensus. So it's a way for the node to decide what the next block is going to look like, and so it helps ZeroConf because you know which transaction is going to be in the next block. It helps also block propagation because all the nodes kind of expect the blocks to look a certain way, so you can use block propagation techniques that are more aggressive.
Gotcha. Yep.
And you can also use that. To protect against 51% attack to some extent, and it works similar to a double spend, right? So a 51% attack would be a miner that have a lot of hash rate that start mining a chain but not publishing the blocks, right? And when the main chain and the other chain have grown sufficiently, suddenly the miner that have more hash rate reveal everything and all the history is changed, which is very bad for money. You don't want to make a transaction and then an hour later the transaction is reverted.
Yep.
Right. So how would you? So the problem is, for the same reason, blocks take time to propagate on the network. So how do you decide if the block that you receive is a natural, a natural race between two blocks, because, it happens from time to time, because by the time some block propagate, maybe some other miner also find a block, right? And then you have two blocks that race on the network. Or do you decide that this is a miner that is actually malicious? So the way you would do it is that it's actually easier to understand that for the case of double spend, but this is the same mechanism. But because it's on the 10-minute time scale, it seems more human, right? Yeah, so the way you would do it, you could actually do it as a human manually because you're on the 10-minute time scale. So the way you would do it is that you would look on various block explorer, various services, what block they consider to be the top block, right? So maybe you go on btc.com explorer or blockchair or explorer.bitcoin.com or whatever and see, what is the main block that they consider to be the one. And if they kind of disagree on what is the top block, then you're okay, there is a race between block. I'm not very confident what the state of the world is. I'm going to wait a bit longer. I'm going to query them again later to see what's going on, right? But if they all agree on something, you can tell yourself, okay, I'm seeing also this top block and they all agree the top block is the same. So if suddenly some other branch appears out of nowhere, you can be confident that it's an attack.
I see, yeah.
Yeah, and especially if, Bitcoin.com and BTC.com, or I don't know who else I see it, maybe blockchain.info or whatever. If they are doing the same process, maybe they query between each other, they query, I don't know, Coinbase and Kraken and whatnot, if they all query each other, and they all agree, then they have a very strong confidence that everybody is seeing the same tip at the chain. And if someone suddenly publish a new tip that is a deep reorg, you know that this new tip is actually not a legitimate race, but
right. Yeah, that makes sense. And all that happens, within the 10 minutes.
Yeah. So actually, this process. It really depends how split the network is. If you have a 50-50 split, it's going to take more time for, because you have many nodes that need to flip their internal state. But most of the time, it actually takes, about 2 seconds.
Okay, right.
to make a decision.
Very fast.
And it's very quick. And if if there is an actual double spend and then the node are fairly split 50-50, it can take a bit longer, but we're still talking about like a handful of seconds, and so that's why we think it's very interesting technology.
Interesting, yeah. Okay, then just I don't want to keep you for too long. So other things that are in the future plan, the roadmap. Have you seen anything else that's of special interest?
Yeah, so I don't have the whole roadmap on top of my mind, but essentially the different axes we're going for are scaling. So Bitcoin is actually one of the blockchain that scale the best, but it's like there are a few stuff that don't scale very well.
Right.
And so we want to improve those few stuff. It's not gonna change fundamentally how it works, but you can tweak various stuff here and there to make it easier to scale. And it's very much aligned with the objective that we have. There is the zero conf aspect, like fast transaction, stuff like that. So this is what we are focusing on with Avalanche. And there are like various more like utility feature stuff. Like we did in November, we activated check data sig, which is a way to check arbitrary signature in the blockchain, and it allows a bunch of feature like oracles, for instance.
Okay.
So an oracle is like an authority, essentially, that maybe like both of us, we want to make a contract based on the price of Bitcoin next year, for instance. And if it's like, some value, you get the money. If it's some more value, you get the money. Maybe the both of us are going to trust, some source of information for the price. And that source of information can publish like a price every day and sign it. And then we can use that in the smart contract. And if we both trust the same oracle, then we're good. And if we don't quite, maybe like if we don't want to trust the oracle too much, we can choose a set of oracle instead of just one. Like there's plenty of stuff you can do.
You don't think, do you, that trying to introduce smart contracts and token layers, that kind of thing, onto Bitcoin Cash, is it reaching too far? I mean, if it's Bitcoin Cash, the name implies that you want to spend it as money, and that's one of the complaints.
A lot of people are doing tokens right now on BCH, but the model is a bit different than other platforms that do tokens. And it kind of like tied on with what you were saying. Like our goal, first and foremost, is to make a money that have good monetary properties.
Yeah,
that's like what we are going for. And so all the stuff like tokens and stuff like that are more nice to have, and we are happy to do them as long as they don't go against the main goal of good monetary properties. And so this led us to design the token systems that works on BCH in very different ways from, say, Ethereum, for instance, very popular platform to do tokens. Ethereum's, they do token with smart contracts that are executed by the miners that define the rules of the tokens. And the miner execute those rules based on the transaction that the people are making. And this is how the token works. The way it works in BCH is a bit different because actually the miner don't validate what's going on with token at all, right? So the way we do it is that with each transaction that you can make on chain, it's a regular transaction, but you can add on top of that a payload that contains arbitrary data that miner just include in the block, but don't as far as miner are concerned, anything can go in there.
Right, and that's what companies like RSK are working on. Is that right?
There are many token system.
Wormhole.
Yeah, Wormhole is one of them. Kcoin, there was a presentation today about Kcoin. It's another one. There is SLP. So there are various systems that all make different trade-offs. And the way it works is that you essentially connect another software, so like the Wormhole software or the SLP software or the Kcoin software, to a Bitcoin Cash node.
Right.
And this software is going to interpret those extra data in the transaction to interpret whatever the token system it should mean. And it's an interesting system because as far as the main protocol is concerned, this is very lightweight. Because there is no like complicated rule to validate or whatnot, so it doesn't have impact on scaling. For instance, like ATH is significantly more complicated to scale than a Bitcoin-like technology, and this is one of the reasons. So we wanted to stay very scalable and don't put extra challenge for ourselves on that front. So by not having to validate that at the consensus layer, but having some extra software that does the extra interpretation, then you don't have to make those scaling trade-offs.
Excellent, yeah.
This is also a way to introduce that permission. This is why we see different token systems that make different trade-offs, because people, they can build those token systems. They don't need to ask the authorization to anyone. They essentially have this payload that they can reverse transaction, and they can decide to interpret it whatever way they want.
I see, yeah. I see it as kind of a dilemma. You want to keep it simple and money-like so that people will understand it and use it. But on the other hand, you need more functionality to bring some more interest and, dare I say, investment into the space.
Yeah, so I think we made a pretty good trade-off with that old token solutions, and we see already people that have launched tokens using those technologies. So it seems to be working. I myself hasn't been involved in the whole token stuff on BCH too much.
Right.
And when the reason it can be that way, it's because it's interpreted client side, right, by some other software that connects to the node. So as far as a person that write the node software, I need to make sure that people have this payload that they can use in the transaction, and that's it.
Cool. And for now, you're still getting along with the developers of the other Bitcoin Cash protocols, like Unlimited XT.
Well, it depends which one, to be honest. Some of them we have good relations.
We expect a robust debate.
Yeah. So what's happening is that we both need to cooperate, but we also are competitor to some extent, and so it creates a weird relationship. It's not always easy.
It does, yeah. It goes back to that original point about having the different teams. It creates an odd situation sometimes. Because you're not going to agree on everything.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, anyway, thanks a lot for talking to us, and all the best with everything.
Cool.
Thanks.
Thank you.